Hey, welcome into Impact. Today we have a special edition and I'm really excited about it. But before we get into this, let me just remind you of a few things that I think are important for us before we watch. That number one, Bostin Loyd's life was a tragedy. And the tragedy was not just that he died, but that he died at such an early age from abuse of steroids. And so it was one of those things where people are going to have strong opinions about it. The bodybuilding community is saying that he died from a genetic disorder, as the bodybuilding community says about all guys that die. But it's very important to note that the things that Bostin experienced and the health issues that he experienced and the degrading of his health were helped along by the steroids and the amounts that he took. And I am not suggesting that everybody will end up like Bostin Loyd, but it's a warning out there because, as I've said, I have 12, 14, 15-year-old kids that I've heard from who are taking trenbolone acetate. And I think that somebody has to start sounding the alarm and making a difference. Now, you may not agree with everything Marie says, and some things may rub you the wrong way. But again, these are from her perspective. And it doesn't mean that I necessarily agree with everything she says either. And it doesn't mean that I think she's necessarily wrong or that she's right. I just think she's looking through the perspective of basically her point of view in the life and the death of her son. And so when you hear those things that seem to impugn her ex-husband or others, just understand that's where it's coming from. Whenever there's divorce, there's going to be those type of hurts. Now, I have serious questions because I truly believe that what parents excuse in moderation, children take to excess. And you will hear my story in here just a little bit about how my father and grandfather were obsessed with bodybuilding, and I didn't even know them. And so it was passed along to me. And so even though, as Marie said, Bostin did not see John's steroid and drug abuse, I believe it was passed on to Bostin. Now, understand something. I have serious questions and doubts as to why a boy was brought up into the bodybuilding lifestyle, why he was put on stage at such early age and all of that stuff. Because to me, I feel like that you were literally setting this kid up. Everybody knows that the dark side of bodybuilding is the real side of bodybuilding, especially competitive bodybuilding. If you are going to go anywhere in the sport, you have to take a massive amount of drugs. And the parents knew that from the beginning. Now, it's no surprise that Bostin went the way he went. But it is a little bit of a surprise that he, as far as I'm concerned, that he documented it on YouTube in such a way where it showed his abuse. And if he truly reached out for help to his mom and dad, then some of my concerns are, why was there not help at a younger age? Now, I do believe Marie tried to help him. At the age of 17, you're going to find out that Bostin had serious kidney problems already. And you're going to hear about that. And I actually have the paperwork that shows it, all of his values. And so there were a lot of things that were going on behind the scenes that people just didn't know about. And so Bostin evidently did cry out for help numerous times with his addiction. And you will find out just before he died, he had gone back onto massive amounts of steroids, injecting himself, and then he died. You see, Bostin said he wanted to get big or die trying. And he paid the ultimate price because we all know that Bostin Loyd died at the age of 29 trying to get big. Hey, everybody, welcome back to Impact. We are really excited today because there's some really neat stuff happening out there in the bodybuilding world. And we are seeing a huge influx of people into this channel and a huge influx of understanding more about what steroids and recreational drugs are doing to guys out there. We are seeing guys drop like flies, and it's really a sad thing.
And we're seeing guys younger and younger get sick, need kidney transplants and all that other stuff. So today we have a special treat. We have Bostin Loyd's mom, Marie, on today because she has a big announcement of some things that are coming up about Boston here in October. And we're going to give her a chance to give you that information. And I think you're going to be excited. I think everybody just about loved Boston. He was one of those guys that was polarizing. So guys either really loved him or it seemed like guys were jealous of him and they hated him. But being a guy that wasn't sure about Boston when I met him, you just couldn't help but like the guy. So today, Marie, we're really excited to have you on this show. And thank you for coming in.
Sure. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So I know you got a big announcement about something that's coming out here in October. I know you don't have an exact day yet, but it is coming out in October. Tell us what you've been up to in memory of Bostin, your son.
We are making a movie documentary called Get Big, Die Trying, which was a tattoo on my son's arm. It is a story of his life history, not just as an adult, but as a child, how he got up on stage at 5 years old and would raise money for kids with cancer in the Special Olympics. How he used to train kids and used to get paid $40 an hour at the age of 12, 13, and 14, and working with Special Olympic needs kids.
Wow.
Story about his drug abuse, his addiction,
Yeah.
and how it started at 17 years old, and how he started doing it, and why. In this movie, it is all broken down with his YouTube videos. It is Bostin speaking from the grave. But in there, we have psychologists, psychiatrists, cardiologists, different doctors, and they break down what he was going through and what he was thinking and what his body was going through. Get Big, Die Trying is that you're looking great inside, but you're dying inside.
Yeah.
Bodybuilding has become drug warfare. It's not who's the best genetics, it's who has the ability to work the drugs, who
Yeah.
knows more about different drugs. And it's not maybe the best person or the best potential person, it's who knows how to work the drugs. And my son was the first whistleblower. He told it like it is, the number one person. And then after that, everybody started talking about their drug programs. So in this documentary, you'll see his life, the middle and the end, and what happened to him and what is happening to the bodybuilding world.
Yeah. So you are not just trying to present Bostin as some shining knight, so to speak. You actually talk about the flaws and the things that happened to him and the way the bodybuilding world sucked him in. Is that correct?
Correct. And his YouTube videos will speak for him.
Yeah, that's great. Let's back up because you have shared with me a lot of pictures and a lot of videos that I don't think anybody's ever seen before, or maybe not even a long time. But let's back up to when Bostin was little. How did Bostin get into this world? What got him into this?
Well, I used to, his dad and I owned Gold's Gym in Northridge, California, and we had people that were competing, and they would come to my house and I would show them how to pose. Now, Bostin at the age of 2 would be watching me help these people pose, and he put on his little trunks and he wanted to be with them. So I'd have a lineup of people posing and he'd be right in there with them. So you're talking 2 or 3 and he's posing with them. And he was,
Wow.
and Bostin was extremely smart and verbal at a young age. Bostin spoke well. He was very verbal. He was very funny. We owned a gym, and many people used to go, "Who is that kid? He just told me I was fat, or I need to work out, or I should stay longer on the bicycle because I need to lose more weight." I mean, the kid was incredible. I mean, the first time he met my second husband, he looked at him and I said, well, he's a banker. He said, banker? He looks like a bank robber.
Oh my
So,
goodness.
yeah, and he did. So, the things that he used to say go on and on, which got him in trouble in school, most of the time in detention.
Oh, he was in most of the time in detention. Well, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, at a young age, he was very verbal and got in trouble. So I took him to a new school and I get a call from the principal right away. The first 3 days, she goes, everybody is telling me this kid Bostin said this or said that to him. And he goes, I finally wanted to meet this kid Bostin. And he's, in first grade. And so she meets the kid and she said, your son is a genius. The principal sat me down and she goes, he is going to drive everybody nuts.
Uh-oh.
With every teacher knew Bostin. That's the way
Already.
he would get up. He knew how to pose at such a young age because he was raising money for kids with cancer. So when he turned 5 and 6, he was on stage and very verbal speaking. So in school, one day he took his shorts off and his top, jumped on the table and started posing. So I got in trouble.
Right in class.
In class, he got up on the table and started posing. And he had these Superman underwears and he was wiggling his butt. Of course.
So he got in trouble for that.
I didn't go to school for that.
Well, I mean, he was already on stage at that point. Now, you were a competitor. Your husband was a competitor, right? Yeah. And so you guys were accomplished in your own right. And so it was kind of just a natural thing that Bostin would kind of get into that and follow that life, right?
Right, but it was his personality that drove. I mean, when we used to guest pose together, well, it was me first, and I bring him along, and I was the person because we did the natural shows. I was the final finale, and all of a sudden he starts posing. Now he's the final finale. So we went to Fort Campbell in Kentucky one time, and I was supposed to be the final finale, and Bostin took the show. He jumped into the crowd where the kids are, because in Fort Campbell, the guys are in one area and the parents and the kids are in the other. He was smart enough to jump off stage and start posing in front of the kids and then jump back up on stage.
Oh, wow.
It was within him at a young age.
Okay.
He wanted
Yes.
to please. I mean, like when he'd get up on stage, his first thing was thank you for clapping. He was very humble.
Yeah.
And so he would start raising money for kids with cancer. He'd sell his picture for $5. And he'd be very persuasive to people. So we would go to Venice Beach, the most popular area in California, Muscle Beach, and he would pose, go into the audience, and get $5 a shot for his pictures. And then after that, he would get people to donate for kids with cancer and the Special Olympics. In fact, he was the top donator.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, that's how much passion he had to help other people at a young age. He knew where the money was going. And we kind of adopted a special needs girl that used to stay with us a lot. And he thought that was his sister. She was Down syndrome. And sometimes they'd make fun of her when we go places. And this kid stuck up for her. I remember him karateing somebody because they said something about her. That's another thing is he knew karate very well. He went up the levels at a young age. And Chuck Norris, who was one of my clients, noticed his ability. He said, this kid's awesome. So you're having somebody like Chuck Norris who worked with him a little bit saying, wow, he's got it.
Wow, that's really neat. So back up a little bit. Tell us about this thing that Bostin would go. You told me to hospitals, cancer hospitals, or Special Olympics. How is he involved there? Not just money, but he was involved in those things as well, correct?
Yes, he would go to the kids with cancer, the facility in LA, and he would talk to the kids, and they were about his age, but they thought he was a big celebrity because he was raising money, and they made a big deal of him going there. and he would talk to the kids. And he's only like 6 or 7, but he's talking to these kids and explaining, things could be better and everything. And he got on the news, and he was everywhere back then in different magazines and TV stations. He was a rising star.
Yeah. Now, when did he start getting more serious as far as the working out and start moving into competing, and then how did that look for you guys?
Okay, let me go through a little piece there why he stopped. Okay, so 7, the father and I got divorced.
Okay.
And he was supposed to go on many talk shows. And when we got divorced, when the father picked up and left, Boston went in his room, and I cried in one room, he cried in the other. And he came out and he said, "Mom, I'll help you out. Here's $50 if we need help." That's how, but it destroyed him, the divorce.
Mm.
He went from being a child actor, getting on stage, to being very depressed and gained weight. And it wasn't until his teenage years he started getting out of it, like 15, that he realized he had to do something. But he was very angry about the divorce.
Sure.
So he used to get in trouble. He was special ed. He had what you call a one-on-one, that a shadow that goes everywhere with you. So first they gave him some girl, and I said, "You can't give him a girl." I said, "He needs some karate expert." I said, "Because he could do damage."
Oh,
So finally they believed me, because they realized that this kid knew karate, and he got angry. He was angry over the divorce. He was just an angry kid now. High intelligence. So the one-on-one would take him to the regular classes and then take him back to the special ed kids.
right.
And that's where he met his best friend at that time, Billy, who did the music for Boston's movie.
Oh, wow.
A black kid from Compton, and he did a fabulous job on the music.
Yeah.
So now we're talking 15, 14, 15. Now he's getting back into it. He's helping me. I was judging the Venice Beach shows, and he was helping out in the back and with sales. And something clicked inside of him that he wanted to get big again, muscular and look good. And his friends were all coming over. I had a full gym in my home, and they were all working out, and they got hooked.
Okay.
And
Now,
it
did he play sports, anything like that?
played football. He did karate.
Okay.
He did gymnastics at a young age and dance. And he was in a tutu when he was about 3 years old doing ballet.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, he didn't care people made fun of the tutu. In fact, he wanted to wear a girl's tutu just to get attention. So that's how his mind worked. He said, "If I wear a girl's tutu, I'm going to get attention." Because he had that little bit of a smart assness, and that started at a young age.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell us about when he got into working out at the house. You told me that he was training there, making money. And then where and when did the steroids start that you know of?
Okay, he started working out again maybe at 12 with his friends. They'd all come over. I train them, and they had fun. So that's about 13. 14, he started getting more muscular and bigger, and he started training people himself. And I think I might have showed you some pictures. So he
Yeah.
was his friends. So the steroids started 17, 16, 17. He started getting real big. So I ripped apart his room, and there I found it. And I got mad, and I called the father up, and I said, "Look," I said, "he's 16 years old. We can't have this." It was 16. I went to the gym he was going to, it was Powerhouse in Chatsworth, and I wanted to know who sold it to him. I even
Right.
went to the police, and I said, "Look, he's 16 years old. This can really mess him up." So I gave it to the dad, and I thought that was going to be the end of it. And then at 17, or 18, his dad gave it back to him.
At 18, his dad gave him back the drugs?
He gave it back to the drugs. I
Wow.
confiscated it, but when he turned 18, his dad gave it back to him, and I had no clue. I was trying to go to the Dr. Phil show, and because at 18, here he is, 240 pounds or 260. He was huge. And I called the Dr. Phil show, and they wanted me. And I was like, wow, this is great. So I corresponded back and forth with them, and they said, we're interested in your son. We'll take him on. So everything was set, and they go, well, the father has to come. So I called the dad up thinking he'd jump on it. Well, he didn't want to go on. So they said, without the father, you can't go on. And later on, I found out the reason why, because he's the one who gave it back to him at 18.
Oh.
So 16.
So let me ask you something. With therapists, counselors, psychologists, locally and all of that, why did you choose to go to a TV show? Why did you choose to go to Dr. Phil?
Because I thought because he used to love Dr. Phil. I mean, he loved him. So I thought, okay, maybe this, if you like somebody and you emulate them, sometimes it helps.
Right.
So I thought the Dr. Phil show would say something to Bostin that if we had mom and dad there and also a psychologist, it would help. So that would be bringing in a third person who is a counselor, who is a psychologist, and that maybe something could be done. But it was also to bring awareness, because at this time, a lot of kids were taking steroids. It wasn't just Bostin, it was his friends too, because we're from a pretty well-off area. Buying these steroids was easy.
Right. Yeah. So with that, you also reached out to a couple of other high profile people as well to try to get Bostin help. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
I had in the neighborhood that I asked, would you talk to? And if it wasn't his dad, it wasn't going to sink in. It had to be mom and dad there.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you reached out to the Washington Post. They did a series on steroids and people dying from steroids. I believe you reached out to them too. Isn't that correct?
They actually called me up. This was later on after Bostin passed. This was after Bostin passed, and they were going through and they saw me on the Dave Palumbo show, and they were interested in my story, and they were just interested in Bostin. And then I said, well, Bostin, this is a bigger story than you know. I said, you don't understand what you're taking. So I talked to her for a while, and it was unbelievable. It was 4 days of Washington Post about all different people.
Yeah.
That competed and died. Bostin was the only one that didn't die like competing on stage.
Right.
But they were very thorough to make sure everything was correct, and they did a very good job.
Yeah.
But it didn't seem to make that much of a dent.
Yeah. So you were really looking to make an impact into his life, but not just his life. You were looking to make an impact, hopefully somehow in the bodybuilding world, to bring awareness to what's going on.
Yeah, this is after he passed away. The Washington. Yes.
Now, let's be clear. All of the trophies behind you are your trophies, correct? And you are a lifetime natural competitor, correct?
I wouldn't say, okay, lifetime, meaning until I did the over 60 nationals. My joints were killing me. In Bostin, of course, Mr. Drug himself, he gave me some NPP for my joints. So I will admit I took NPP a quarter a week. So I split the quarter a week of the CC. And he gave me some growth hormone. And I used that when I did the over 60 nationals. So I'm not saying it was totally natural, because here I am. I was 62 at the time. So I took it.
Okay. But for the bulk of your career, were you natural?
Yes.
Yeah.
And most of these trophies are natural.
Okay, great. So you know the difference. Now, you were married to John, who did compete at one time, and John was an enhanced athlete, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So Boston, did Boston have direct knowledge from his dad about steroids?
No, not really. In fact, we tried to keep it hush hush. It
Really?
wasn't really. He went to college, and somebody squealed about, your dad did a lot of drugs, and he used to sell drugs here in Walnut Creek because he went to DVC College over in Walnut Creek, Pleasanton, and people knew John there because we used to have a gym in Walnut Creek. He was shareholders with a guy named Steve O'Brien, and they kind of told people about Boston's usage, Boston's dad's usage, and that's when he found out his dad, did more stuff. I tried to like hush it because monkey see, monkey do,
Yeah.
and the addictive personality was John had an addictive personality because he did the steroids and then he did the cocaine. And when the father did that, we didn't know what to do. When you're married to somebody, you try the best you can. And I believed he was addicted to steroids also. So I called my dad up and I said, I don't know what to do. And he said, call his parents up. So we had a intervention, and the Christian cavalry came too. A lot of the Christian friends came, and we all held hands and prayed for John.
Yeah.
It seemed to work. So my dad
Yeah.
said, okay, let's take him to Europe for 3 weeks and maybe we'll clean him out. Okay, that didn't work. Bring him back. He's still. So my dad says, move. He goes, you got to get the heck out of Walnut Creek, get him away from his friends. So we had an opportunity to run the Northridge Gold's Gym in California. So we moved. My dad said, when people call, hang up. Because you didn't have cell phone back then.
Right.
If his friends call, hang up. He's got to get clean. He's got to have a different life. And that worked. He was a good husband. He worked well with people, and he cleaned up. And he got into God later on, which was
Yeah.
good. But he had that addictive personality.
Yeah. Now, John has been clean and out for a long time now, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. And from what I understand, he really has turned his life around.
Yeah, he's turned his life around. I think all